God damn it, Jeff. Name one thing that you've done that says you're trying to figure out the puzzle pieces.
I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.
Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with, now they looking nervously. And I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet next to me. I don't give a fuck
what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way.
Coming out with a statement. You really changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it, get after it. Get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer.
What you say, yeah, I'ma do shit my way.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah.
Turn on your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice and control.
And here we go.
Welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
What is going on, Hive? I hope that everybody's having an awesome day. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your evening here in the Hive. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm your host, Birdie. I go live weeknights at 7 p.m. Central. And tonight, we are going to be having a conversation that a lot of people feel in their gut but are too afraid to say out loud. And we have a special guest joining us, being JJ State of the Deep. And I always look forward to chatting with JJ. He is a very bright, well-spoken man, and he knows a lot of stuff about how narratives are shaped and narratives are formed. And as I always like to say, we are commencing narrative warfare on the Idaho 4 case. Now, I'm going to quickly say what's up to everybody, and then I want to have as much time as possible with Mr. State of the Deep. And so as you all are filing in, please go ahead, hit that like button. I saw Accomplished Day, who last night absolutely blew my mind. I'm sure it blew a lot of yours too, with the detail, the attention to detail in the timeline that Accomplished Day had made. And it was posted on Reddit, and Kristen from the Hive had sent it in. Accomplished Day just so happened to be in the chat, which is great. And thank you for the super chat. They said, quick note, I have not forgotten about the timeline. I'm printing to PDF and we'll send the PDF in Excel. If the timestamps are off, please let me know and I'll review and update it as needed. You absolutely rock for that. And I will keep an eye out. Thank you so much for putting that together, not just for sending it to us, but also for everybody that's looking into the Idaho 4 case. That is extremely helpful. And I will get that posted in the Discord as well. If that's okay with you, Accomplished Day, if that's for quote unquote public release, I will gladly share it in our Discord if you have not or somebody else has not already. And Elbow's mom, I'm in me mom's car, said Hive OG member, check it in for her first milestone, 2 months. Great to be in a group of people who really do want justice. Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xander Cardota, we care. Amen to that. And Amanda Kessinger said, Birdie, so totally random. What's the intro song you play that says, I don't give up what you say? I've not been able to find it. It is called My Way by Nefix. And actually, Amanda, I don't know if you plan to do this, but on the QR code, if you scan this, we do have a Spotify playlist with all of the intro songs, as well as it'll take you to a link of our merch store, my TikTok, and our Discord, as well as Hive Plus. I'm about to be dropping that link now. If you'd like the emojis and the loyalty badge next to your name, the mods will drop that link. And thank you to everybody who does choose to support this stream financially. It's obviously not a requirement. All of the streams will always be free, but on Saturdays, we do a merch giveaway, and the live chat is reserved for those folks. I also want to keep reminding people of this, that if you would like to share any of the clips that I'll post to TikTok or to YouTube Shorts, I am posting them in the Discord as well, the raw file, if you'd like to share them out onto Facebook or any other platform that you are on. Since I am not on those, that way you can share them. And I am going to also just now put this on screen. I've been told that I don't necessarily need to read this every night, just show it. So that is helpful. Whoops, wrong one. All righty. So now, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our guest for this evening. We have JJ, State of the Deep. How are you doing, brother? Good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Well, what's up, Birdie? What's up, Hive? And by the way, Birdie, congratulations to you and Mrs. Birdie. I haven't been able to say that to you face to face, so
appreciate that, brother. Appreciate that, brother. I'm stoked, obviously, to have our first child. I'm also stoked for our conversation tonight. And just to let people know too where they can find you, I'll get this put up on screen right away here in the beginning. JJ has officially launched his channel, everybody. So go show JJ some love. He's got 7 videos now. Jeez, he's got 666 subscribers. Somebody go right now, get that devil number. I don't claim that. Get that devil number off the screen for JJ for us. We don't want that energy for this evening. But JJ, that's awesome, man. How's that been going?
It's going, man. It's I had some technical issues the past week with getting my live. I couldn't get stuff to connect. I'm under attack, man. My X account's under attack. My YouTube's under attack. So when you speak the truth, you know, you run into some roadblocks sometimes. I don't know how that happens.
It's almost like the technology might exist that there could be keywords that are detected through speech or whatever you type into a chat that a mega AI system would be filtering and maybe flagging for people and building a profile with a photo of them and saying, this guy might not be a danger. This guy's probably a danger. We should probably watch out for what they're looking into, since this is how they talk.
Right. Yeah, they're definitely not going to push it out if you get flagged or filtered in some way.
Right. Well, let's dive right into it. And I think how I started the stream by saying, you know, we're going to be having a conversation this evening that a lot of people feel some degree of it in their gut, but might be a little bit afraid to say it out loud. And to just be extremely clear before we start, this does not necessarily mean that nobody died, that the murders are fake. We are going to be talking at a high level tonight on how the narrative or the story seems to match a well-known playbook in the intelligence agencies. And so, JJ, I don't know if that's a good spot for you to jump in and kind of talk about how it is that you look at things, especially this case.
Yeah. Well, the first thing right out of the gate is pattern recognition, right? It's being able to see patterns that reemerge time and time again. And something that I always say is on high profile cases like the Idaho 4, like Charlie Kirk, like Luigi Mangione. There are many, obviously, but those are in more recent times where people would be familiar with them. If you've seen enough of these patterns over time and you've researched how things are done relating to the bigger picture operations and things like that, you recognize them. Now, I joke all the time and I say, I don't look at every case and think that's an operation. Some
No.
cases are, they might be exaggerated or you get a little bit of mainstream media nonsense. But, you see a case, a murder case, it's like, this is what happened. Here's the evidence. Here are the potential suspects, and then they may catch somebody. I don't look at every case like that. But when you have these really high profile cases where the media is in lockstep, if you pay attention, you will start to see patterns emerge, right? It's pretty clear once you tap into it. So for me, that's a starting point.
I would agree with that. Once the narrative is emerging, right? You'll see the pattern of public emotion being managed, your attention to certain details of the case or evidence of the case is being managed. Your outrage is one of the most effective things that they will manage. Silence is managed, and I'm trying to think of if there's anything else, maybe just your overall perception or what they want you to believe you could wrap into the overall narrative. But when they tell you you can't question something, that's also a part of the pattern. And
That's it. That's a big one.
it's huge. And I think that that might be the most prominent one in the Idaho 4 case as time has gone on, is you're not allowed to question this.
Right. And think about it logically. If someone is acting in good faith and presenting actual facts, you don't have to worry about whether people believe it or not. That shouldn't be anybody's concern. People are allowed to think how they want to think. But we've gotten to a point in time where there's a lot of social engineering happening, right? It's very obvious. I mean, I talk about this stuff on my channel, and I've talked about it ad nauseum on other channels. But the problem is, I think, and I've said this before, people tend to frame things because that's the way the brain works, right? It has mental shortcuts. So if you're playing sports and you're a sports fan, you'll look at sports a certain way. Your brain is conditioned to look at sports and things like that a certain way. It's
Agreed.
trained to watch the quote unquote news a certain way. People that follow true crime, they don't do it intentionally. None of us do. But you develop a framing in your brain, right? Everybody does it. And so you can easily be led down a path of how to think, a linear path. And that's why I always say you have to zoom out. You have to zoom out. To your point, what are they trying to get me to feel? Why are they pushing so hard to get me to think a certain way? Because if they're, like I said, if they're acting in good faith, you don't do that. You don't get mad that people don't believe what you're pushing, right? But when you have this heavy-handed narrative, to me, that's a red flag. And that's kind of what I have witnessed in the Idaho 4 case, among many others.
Well, I think everybody that's watching this or listening to you right now knows exactly what you're talking about. Not just for this case, but you could, like I said, you could really feel it in your gut every time that something big happens, especially when a significant percent of the public is scared, or if they're talking about it, right? The media is telling you where to look. Now, one of the things that you and I were talking about backstage that I didn't just mention as far as for a part of the pattern that is timely for this case is we have experts that come on TV and they seem to speak in a tone that says this is settled or it's not exactly settled. However, it'll probably never be settled in. If you can't tell what I'm referring to, it's Chris Whitcomb with Broken Plea. And this is no knock on Chris Whitcomb. I thought he was a very nice guy to have a conversation with. I do find it a little bit strange that he's just kind of disappeared completely, though.
Yeah, and you know, I've said this before, like I am not a true crime guy per se, in the sense I always looked at it from like a psychology point of view, right? And I looked at things from more like a profiling point of view when I started getting into true crime stuff. And it's funny because you have quote unquote experts, and it's almost like, all right, I just did a video on this. This is kind of where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Limited hangouts, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fairly well known tactic in the intelligence community, but it's also used in public relations and politics, right? And that's where you release sort of like bombshell information, and you don't release the whole story, right? This is perfect. And the purpose of it is a few different things: to get people to think, wow, this person's really blowing the whistle, and they're giving us, oh my God, they're giving us this like top secret information or bombshell information. But they're in the process, they're steering the narrative very strategically, and it satiates people and it makes them think, a la Broken Plea. Oh my God, the clump of hair, and oh my God, this, that, and the other. One of the first things that I, noticed with that was the timeline. All
As
three of
far as,
these people,
sorry,
right, that have,
just the timeline of the book or the timeline of Chris Whitcomb releasing it? I just want to clarify.
good point, both, but I
Okay.
was referring in this particular case to the case,
Okay.
to the right, but the timing of these quote unquote almost like whistleblowers, right, in a weird kind of way, right?
Yeah.
Turvey, Whitcomb, Holland, but they all are going with the 4 a.m. pretty much at 4 a.m. timeline, right? Now again, keep in mind how I'm framing it, everybody. I understand everybody's got their take on it, but I'm framing it from the perspective of, I pay attention to that stuff. They're all telling us this bombshell information. Oh, but it's the 4 a.m. timeline. Don't look over here. Oh, by the way, that's not the biggest thing. Look at this, the black SUV. That's shifting people, but very
So true.
strategically.
It's true. That's true. I actually, in preparation, because I knew you and I would probably talk about Chris Whitcomb, Hive, I actually pre-typed out a poll and type 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for no, but wouldn't surprise me. Whoops, I had a typo there. And the question is, do you believe Chris Whitcomb still works for the CIA or is undercover as a journalist? Now, JJ and I had been talking about this video here, and I will show this person their channel, Lucy Morningstar. Now, this is the video that we are referring to right here. It's DM to BF. I'm so screwed, though. Okay, so thank you to the people that tagged me in this or sent me that. It is a very interesting watch, and I'm gonna kind of reference that as the spark of the idea with Chris Whitcomb, because there are clips of him on rather big platforms saying, one of my covers was being a journalist. And any stable country, when he was running coup d'etats for the CIA, he said, any stable country I have no interest in, which is a good glimpse into his mindset and things that he had been capable of before. And so it is wild that he was a journalist cover. And JJ, you said something backstage that really solidified it in my mind too. What are we all referring to him as right now?
Yeah.
FBI.
I just saw it in the chat too. I was just going to say that. I said this to people before, and I probably said it on streams too. People are saying, oh, former special agent from the FBI. Well, after that, he openly talked about being an intelligence contractor, right? He even mentioned the CIA, I believe. So to me, that's far more relevant. And then for him to say journalism covered, this is the stuff I've been talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and I get resistance sometimes because I get it. It seems like to people who don't understand how operations work, I'm not saying like nobody understands it. A lot of people do. But that's what I was talking about earlier with pattern recognition.
Yes.
This is something that's been going on for a very long time. And so, I mean, there's so many threads to be pulled in the Idaho 4 case that I think have been obscured. Like people have sort of brought them up, but what happens is document drops happen, we get surveillance video, and what if the very basis of what we've been told is not accurate, the most basic aspects of the case? Then we see everything that's come out that was either completely false or not close to the truth. Why would you, to me, why would I assume that we're getting the truth and that things aren't manipulated? What's getting to the public? And if something is blanketed under national security, they can legally lie to you.
Yep.
I mean, there's a law based on this, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. I mean, they're legally allowed to propagandize citizens. So it's just this timing of the book, and then two other people come out and they're making the rounds, but they kind of steer away from certain questions and they steer towards other bits of information. And to me, that anybody with a critical mind would want to dig in a little bit and understand why this heavy-handedness.
I agree. And a lot of people refer to the Smith Modernization Act as it allows the use of propaganda on American citizens, is a very layman's term way to describe it. It happened in 2013 was when it was modernized, but the original act came from 1948.
A year after the CIA was created. And
Yes.
the reason that they created the original Smith-Mundt Act, at least this is what the public's been told, is to basically stop overreach by the CIA. Because what the CIA does, for anybody who may not know, part of what they do is propaganda around the world, right? They push psyops and propaganda around the world for the benefit of the interests of, well, it's supposed to be for the interests of America. I don't think that's what the CIA does, if you want my opinion. But so people implemented the Smith-Mundt Act to prevent overreach and propagandizing of American citizens. Now, we all know that that still went on, right? We know about Operation Mockingbird and the media and the CIA. So we know that's not really what it did, even though that might have been what they said it was supposed to do. So there, essentially, if you have a national security blanket on something, I assume that we're not getting the truth.
And I think to try and tie it back just to the Idaho 4 case specifically, when there is a crime that's this severe, right? We have 4 adults that are murdered, and the story is this simple and this quick. It should make you very uncomfortable. And it should make you very uncomfortable to go off of what JJ just said, that this Smith-Mundt Act is modernized to the point now where it is legal. You can have media companies, or the government has given media companies permission to knowingly and willingly lie. And there's so much stuff that they have under this massive umbrella of that modernization. Now, I am a believer, as you know, if you've tuned in, I don't believe anytime that there's a big narrative push, I'm always looking past the headlines and I'm thinking to myself, what do they want people to believe? And what do they want to social engineer by the quick 2-second glance that you give it when you open up your laptop and you get, the top news stories of the day? That's what I think. What do they want your perception to go towards when you just read the headlines and you see a photo? Because that's more important than the story to them. More people are going to see that than read their actual story.
Yeah, and I think with this case, I have to be careful with what I say because I've said it many times. Like, I'm not going to be able to prove my theories about the Idaho 4 case anytime soon. And in fact, I don't even think I would trust a whistleblower in this case at this
I've said
point.
the same thing, dude. I said people won't buy it. People won't even believe it if certainly not the state, certainly not MPD. I don't know who it would take to come out and be the messenger for that, for anybody to buy it 100%. I don't think it's possible at this point. Too much of a diminishing return.
Yeah, and also think about like all these big operations that got declassified from decades and decades ago. It might come out when like all these people that were involved are long gone, you know. So I
Right.
mean, do we need to even mention the Epstein list? I mean, it's like this is the way it works. And the thing is, so I've been putting myself out there talking about this stuff, knowing full well that people could call me a crackpot. I'm not going to be able to prove my theory anytime soon. But based on what I've seen and many inconsistencies, like for example, we touched on this before the stream. When you have just a handful of inconsistencies or false information, some people might say, oh, it's just, they put out wrong information. Some people might, like me, might think it's disinformation. Then you could maybe write it off and say, all right, incompetence or inexperience or whatever angle you want to look at it. But when there's this many things that seem suspicious, and when so much information that we've been fed was basically proven completely false, then you have to start looking bigger and connecting dots. And the way that I look at things is I look at history. I look at what has been done in the past related to high profile cases, right? And then I don't trust, even if like, for example, somebody came out from the government and said, in a year and said, look, we were working on a bigger operation and we had to keep it concealed. I would assume we're only getting a tiny percentage of the truth.
Or it's like fallout containment, which I am a little bit surprised. Maybe in a way they've tried to do that with Chris Wickham, right? I mean, I think it has gotten to a point where this is going to be on their radar, whoever is, potentially trying to conduct this perception operation, this influence operation, because there is a huge dynamic of that in this case. Your perception about this case, it had to have been a coordinated effort. And you can call that an operation, you can call it a coordinated effort. So rather than calling it a psyop, one of the words that I've been trying to figure out how to use is, no, it's a perception operation. I think most people would agree that there is a coordinated effort with timing of document drops, certain families being interviewed, certain articles, other things that all seem to come out so coordinated. It is not by chance. It is not by the drop of the hat. They got this breaking news. I don't believe that that's how it works. And JJ, before you answer that, I think Blue Eyed Candy had just sent a super chat. It is relevant to this perception operation, I think. What if Brian Koberger's undercover and his road trip home with his dad was to prepare his family for what was going to happen? Maybe the swatting was really a briefing for the family, and that's why nobody's talking. Go ahead.
All right, here's my take on that. I saw that, by the way. A big part of my theory is that BK is an operative. Now, some people may say he's undercover. We've all heard this before. He's really undercover in prison to investigate. We all know the groups that are involved potentially, right? That part of the theories. Here's my take on it. Two main things relating to this. The two stops when he's on the trip with his father, in my opinion, were grooming the public to accept him as the suspect. He gets pulled over twice within a very short time period, doesn't get a ticket. I believe that that was, hey, everybody, look at the white Elantra. Look at this guy. Here he is. And then the leaked video of him in prison. Look at him in prison. Look, here's Brian Koberger. Oh my God, how did this leak happen of him in prison? So to me, those were grooming operations for the public. So I tend to think that they had to cover certain things up. And that Koberger, this is just my theory, was already somehow either involved with research operations. He could have already been working for the feds. He could have been brought to WSU by the feds, right? We don't know if he applied to one of the agencies or not.
And we won't either. If
No,
he
we're
really
not.
is, we're not going to find out.
No, if you're working in operations, like it's illegal to expose somebody that is working in national security operations, right? I mean, you literally get charged with the Espionage Act, right?
Right.
So we're never going to get that information. So to me, there's a lot of other things. Now we're getting into the more granular stuff, right? Thank you, Blue Eyed Candy. All right, you opened the door for this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so look at how many things we have seen in this case that seem very, very coordinated. It takes, now you could say corruption, people think, oh, he was framed. Now I know that stuff happens and I know that it could happen and it's a possibility. However, to frame somebody when there's multiple agencies that had been working in the area, that would mean you have the potentially the okay of the feds to do that, right? Because the feds would have information about the case, right? We know they gave Brian Koberger's name as a quote unquote tip, right? So that's something that you have to look at. The amount of coordination that seems to be involved in this case is overwhelming as far as I'm concerned, especially when you go down the road a little bit and you get to like Broken Plea and you get to Turvey and you get to Holland and then Ann Taylor's kind of suspicious stuff going on. Like, why didn't she address certain major issues?
Isn't it a little bit strange, JJ, that all of the questions, and I'm not saying it's the only answer, but if you were to look through the lens that we are doing this evening, and did Brian Koberger sign up for this? Was that his last trip home, right? Was he aware, was the public being groomed because this was planned before he made his trip back home, that they're going to SWAT him and all that stuff, right? And you look at Chief Jenkins and his emails and all of these things that we could put together with funding. If you are to say that Brian Koberger, when we say Fed, and I want to reiterate this point, we're not saying that he's some sworn in FBI agent per se. We are just saying that there's some sort of role.
Uh-oh, Birdie, you're on the list, man. You froze up. I hope it's not on my end. Hopefully you guys can still hear us.
Terrible face again. Why does that happen to me? Sorry about that, Hive. I got that. I hate that happens. It sucks. I'm not going to let it mess up my flow of thought, though. So I think I told you, JJ, my pregnant wife tripped over my like 100-foot Ethernet cord that I had running in the table. And so we had a guy come out and do a quick fix. We're still waiting for all the new, whatever new motor or modem, whatever the hell it is that we have to put into the wall. It's a certain part. I can't remember the name of it. Anyways, that answer though, of the willing and knowing role, it does check almost every box of why would Ann Taylor be behaving the way that she is? Why is the media acting the way that it is? Why do we have certain people like Chris Whitcomb come out of the woodwork? Why is there's so much drama surrounding this case, so many questions that are very simple that have no answers. It could lend a fairly large percentage of those questions an answer.
Yeah. And that's a really good point because I've had to clarify that many times. Like, I'm not saying it's BK FBI agent or BK CIA agent. You know what I mean? They often, intelligence agencies often, that's why they hire quote unquote contractors, because they have plausible deniability. That's why they have cutout companies, so they have plausible deniability, right? You can get somebody in a role that's not going to be directly connected to intelligence. And that would be more beneficial because it avoids blowback from an operation that goes south. Or, if you get like, for example, imagine if the public found out that I'll do a callback to something, the CI video. One of the victims was a
Yep.
CI. What I think a lot of us would agree that's what we heard in that one body cam video,
Yep.
right? Everybody out there, I'm sure, has thought about this. Can you imagine the blowback for law enforcement and the university if it got out that there was a CI operation going on in conjunction with the university and it got 4 students murdered? Right? The blowback from that would be insane. I mean, talk about the collapse of that university. Who's going to send their kids to that school? And one last thing relating to that. What have we not heard a lot about in a while? The amount of sway that the university would have had on investigations in that area.
Is that are you asking that as a question?
Well, I
Or
mean, I'm
we
kind
kind of
of,
just answered it
it's
right
kind of
there?
rhetorical, right?
Right.
Like, think about how much control the university has. The university is that area. I mean, both of
Yes.
those universities, that's a remote area. I was there. It's in the middle of nowhere. And the university is what contributes all the economy to that area. So, and
Exactly.
to law enforcement, right? People know where their bread is buttered, right? So, the university is probably way more instrumental in everything we've heard and the narratives and so on and so forth up until this point.
I would agree with that. And one of my favorite things about having a conversation with you is that most people, and I mean zero offense by this because I've been guilty of this at times too, and falling into the trap of just looking at the murder scene. And that's wrong to do. If you want to really get a whole picture of a perception operation or just a coordinated media effort, right? The giveaway is usually almost every time probably what's going on around and outside of the murder scene, right? I can't believe how little is talked about what is only really dove into by the internet of things and events that have happened leading up to the murders. Most times there's this escalation phase. And you would think that if 4 college kids get stabbed to death, there's an escalation phase, not just that night, but events leading up to it. Did that seem to intrigue anybody in the media? No. Why? Because it puts the university at risk if it was a frat hazing death or if there was a bunch of drugs or right. So there's so many people that have skin in the game as to why this story needed to be quick, simple, and shut up. Don't ask. It's Brian Koberger, you maniac. You're a guilter. You're victim shaming. You're victim blaming. All of the buzzwords I've become immune to.
Yeah.
I've become immune to it because I know that that's not what I'm doing.
Right. And that's a perfect segue to something that I say a lot. I tell people, don't look at the crime itself and the details immediately around the crime and close to when the crime happened. Look at what happens as a result, which on my first time in the Hive, I said, one of the first things I said was the power structure does things, they plan decades ahead. They have agendas that are planned for 10 years out, right? And so if all right, I'll give you an example. What's the legislation that's being pushed through? Like people can't see crime scene photos and so on and so forth, that type of stuff, right?
And
Well, that's
IPT.
a major thing, right? Because what does that do? It manufactures consent, in my opinion, to violate the First Amendment, to violate freedom of the press, right? But if it's a, who can you not question? You can't question the parents of victims, right? They're going to have a lot of support. That's manufacturing consent for things that are not actually in the long run benefiting citizens. So I always say, look at the things, and I can predict, I'll make a prediction. People can shit on me if I'm wrong. We're going to see a push for the flock surveillance camera systems. Oh, if we had, let's create a theory of like a thought experiment
Okay.
that
I like this.
down the road, BK, some bombshell information comes out and he gets post conviction relief. Right now, they could say, well, if we had this technology in place, if we had a more robust DNA database, if we had a more robust surveillance camera system in place, we could have prevented this crime from ever happening, right? Or we would have never convicted the wrong person. So I just pay attention, everybody, what happens down the road. You have to be patient sometimes.
I've said that with the WSU lawsuit, and another way to potentially get extra surveillance on people is, and now I'm forgetting, is it Title 9, Title 8, Title 9, with employment? Do you know off the top of your head? I can't remember. Is it Title 9?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure which legislation it is, but I remember you talked about it. Something,
Yes,
yeah.
because I said if they want to say after doing right, they've clearly, Brian Koberger applied to go to school there. He applied to be a TA. He was there's a paper trail of him applying for a partnership where Dr. David Macon, one of the professors who was working with the Pullman Police Department, said these four candidates have all met or exceeded the requirements. Well, if you're going to go work for the police department, let's use our heads here. Clearly, the guy's been looked into, right? And he's clear of just his background check. And so if you're going to say that the school, the university, should have been able to prevent a grad student who's got no record of violent history, all of the rumors of him being a weirdo or a creep towards women is just hearsay as far as a court of law that at least the public has seen, right? So if you're going to say if they should have been able to predict that, well, it's not humanly possible. So you said they're going to make a push for the flock surveillance. I said this is going to be some sort of predictive behavior. And we're saying the same thing because they're
Yeah, like Palantir,
Yes.
predictive policing, right? I
policing.
talk about it all the time. A domestic surveillance state, right? Which is, we know that's what they've all been pushing for a long time. I mean, the World Economic Forum openly has talked about that, right? We're living in a surveillance state, right? Everything you do, you can't go more than this, and you can't travel on the, all that
Yep.
stuff. But they're openly discussing it, right? And they will, like they do with everything, anytime the power structure wants to violate people's rights, it's for your own safety. It's for what? The greater good, right?
I can't stand that phrasing.
Right.
I
And
can't
then
stand that.
another thing, Bertie, based on what you were just saying, everything we know about the victims, everybody involved in the periphery of the case, and Brian Koberger is what we have been told about them, right? Nobody knew anything about these people before this case. So I'm just saying, hypothetically, every single thing we've been told could be a complete lie if there's a much bigger picture at hand.
Which that's a let me actually type out a poll. Do you believe that the murders are just a part of the story? And I don't mean any offense to people at all. I'm asking a question that I think needs to be asked, which is, are the murders a part of a story that is much bigger? And what that story is, I don't know, right? I had been talking to somebody from the Hive that started saying, if you ever thought back to like Detective Gooch and her interview with Dylan and asking, and what does Detective Gooch do? It's all like child trafficking, sex trafficking. And why did she only talk to Dylan? And why are these roommates under the protection of the burglary charge where they have an extra legal barrier that they're not allowed to be questioned? They're not suspects. There does seem to be something bigger at play here. And so I'm going to post this poll now, and 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for maybe. And I'm going to go ahead and start that. It is up now. And so JJ, I guess, is there a better way for me to say that? Right? When I say, do you think that the murders are just a part of the story? Does anything come into your head?
Well, I think that that in essence, so let's qualify it, right? Because I know what you're getting at. I've said, many times to the point where I think people are sick of hearing me say it. There are bigger things at play, in my opinion, right? And so that you could look at, if you zoom in to the, 1122 to the King Road area, that, in my opinion, there was something already happening relating to that house. And I have to give credit to Kristen from the Custody Queens Off the Clock with Ron, because when I spoke with them the first time, Kristen brought that up, and a light went off in my head, because I knew something was suspicious, but I never framed it as the house. It's something about that house, man. Come on, man. They knocked the house down. It's
Right.
like, were
It's the
they
Charlie Kirk
trying?
thing too. They knocked that scene down too.
Yeah,
And at 9/11, they got that out of there too. And
that's
again,
it. Look, here's the thing. I believe that the power structure has been so emboldened, right? And let's just go back to 9/11. It goes way back before that, but let's just use 9/11, right? They were able to gain a lot of power from that event.
No.
Yeah. Right? We all
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
No, come on. They really care about us, Birdie.
Yes.
But if you just look at, like, there's too many things. Like the house being knocked down, what was it about that house? I can't answer it. I could speculate on what I think it could be, but
What do you think, actually? I'm curious.
well, I'm going to give credit to Kristen here, because she put that specific part of it in my head. I thought there was something suspicious about, like, the way they were addressing things with the surviving roommates. But Kristen was like, the way all these seemingly disjointed people ended up in this house together was really weird, right? And they're really active on social media, right? I've mentioned that in the past. And could it be, again, we're just theorizing. I'm not meaning to offend anybody, just theorizing. Could that house have been part of the research, off-campus crime research that was being funded?
Yeah. And I think too, JJ, I want you to speak openly, man. If I know you're not trying to offend people, we're having a larger conversation. It's not specifically, meant to say anything, right? We started the stream and we said, we're not saying nobody's dead. We're looking at the perception that they have completely enforced in this narrative. And so it has led people to dig deeper because it is so, concrete. It's written in stone. You can't question it. And so you bring up a great point with there's something strange about all of the victims and their backgrounds. That's, I think, true. They all have something or somebody that could be like, okay, could that start a motive? And now you think about the odds of them all being in that house together.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah. And I want to make this really clear. Now I'm going to have to go zoom out even away from this case for a second. The power structure has done and continues to do straight up evil things. Evil, right? And the way that it's justified is either, oh, it's for the greater good, or America's got to protect their interests, or these people died so that we could save, 1,000 times more, that whole thing, right? So it all depends on how you frame it, but they are capable of evil. Now, nothing would surprise me about this case. Literally nothing. Like if I heard down the road some of the craziest things that were really going on with this case, it would not surprise me in the slightest bit. Bless you. Um, so it's just because I'm looking at it I'm not going, oh my God, how could law enforcement do that? Or how could they lie? How could they? If it's a large operation, man, they have no choice, and while I am torn about whether or not the surviving roommates were involved in any way, shape, or form, because I think it's very possible, I tend to feel like they were given that ridiculous narrative. They were people addressed them way earlier than the 911 call. That house, if again we're going with a thought experiment, that house was involved in some sort of operation, they would have had a contact person. And if something crazy was going down, whatever it is, whatever any potential crazy scenario that was going on with that house, even for the people that believe a Witsec, we've all heard that theory too, Witsec extraction, right? Whatever your theory is, based on my theory, that house had a contact, at least one, and they were called well before the 911 call, which seemed completely fabricated to me because nothing in that call makes any sense. Right. And if they were given that, then that's what they had to go with. And I think Birdie, you're freezing up. I hope it's not on my end again.
No, it's me. We're good. I could hear you though. I turned it up on my phone, so I didn't miss anything. But yeah, even the Witsec angle too. I mean, it's well. Go ahead. Fit it. Was that the end of your?
No, I
point?
mean that's pretty much it, man. It's like I somebody so again, I acknowledged it's very possible there was definitely some knowledge that the surviving roommates had well beyond what we've been told, right? But I think it's very plausible that they were given a narrative to push. And they're a bunch of young kids and they're going to go do what they're told, right? I mean, I have thought of so many scenarios, but some of them I don't talk about because, I try to keep it from going too far out there because I know that you have to sort of, I don't want to start going way out there because when I do, people assume that that's exactly what I think happened. But I can workshop ideas in my head that are possibilities. But some of them I don't really discuss. Poor
Sorry about
Birdman.
that. This
I'm
is
I'm I'm just glad I'm not screwing something up on my end,
no,
dude.
no. This is again. I apologize everybody for that. Nothing I could do. I've tried to looked up everything. Um, So what I want to do though here, JJ, is you had a couple of really good comments come in that were pertaining to what you said. I don't want to just blow by them and get onto a different topic, but RC3340 said the prosecution team played their hand, exaggerated, lied to everyone and the public. Brian Koberger knew they were bluffing and how the system works. He took the plea. Then Bill Thompson and investigators, or sorry, not Bill Thompson, Jesus. Then Turvey and the investigators came out with a big old psych. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure if they're referring to that Koberger was guilty and he realized he wasn't going to beat the system and took the plea, because that's not what I believe. I believe that it was much, much, much bigger than that. I really do. And the way that I come up with ideas, right? I'm open to being proven wrong, right?
Mhm.
I mean, nobody likes that you have a theory, you don't like to be proven wrong. But I kind of feel like there's a difference between thinking you're right and knowing in your gut that you're right.
Mhm.
And I think the difference is when you've aggregated enough information over many years and you have good pattern recognition, then you're going based on a bigger, wider, berth of information. And so I think I have, based on both my education and all the different research I've done over years, and I've seen these patterns, right? So to me, I feel it in my bones that there was an operation involved. So as far as the framing, all these things are very possible and they do happen. But in this case, I really don't think that's what it is. So I'm not sure. I apologize if I'm misinterpreting the comment, but um, I'm not sure exactly what they're getting at.
No, I think you did a good job about, they exaggerated, they lied to everybody. It's more so just, did Brian Koberger think that he studied criminology? And this is how I'm interpreting it. Did Brian Koberger think, because he knew the system, and also that's a big part of the narrative, he's a criminology guy, he wanted to see if he could get away with it, and then it kind of rolls into the court system and the legal proceedings, and he's smarter than everybody, he's a narcissist, and he got cooked by trying to outsmart him. I tend to agree with you. I don't think that, I just think that'd be terrible legal advice. I think that'd be just very stupid. Given what the evidence and things that have come out in this case, I don't know, but I know people feel strongly one way or the other. That's my opinion on it. So I tend to lean more with you that I don't think it's bad luck that he's there.
All right, I've been very measured so far up to this point.
All right, let it loose, let it rip, let her rip. Let's do it.
Look, I met Chris Whitcomb just like you did on stream, not in person, and by all accounts, I mean, he and I have major things in common. I've been a musician for many, many, many years. That's been a massive part of my life. He's a musician. He's a guitar player. He's got beautiful guitars hanging behind him. I those are the types of people that I connect with in life, right? But come on, guys. The guy he openly talks about it. He was an intelligence contractor. And then he comes out with this book. And oh, by the way, two other people come out and they're giving us all this, oh my God, information. But then they're kind of steering. And again, I'm not trying to like promote my channel by saying this. I recently just did a video on limited hangouts and I referred it to the Idaho 4 case. Could these guys be a limited hangout? It's a very well used tactic, which is just for people may have never heard of limited hangouts. Controlled opposition, right, is very similar. Yeah. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's very, very similar, right? You get somebody on board, they get the public's trust, they have some credibility, and they weave a narrative, and then you think they're against the official narrative, but they're questioning part of the official narrative. But there's another part of it that they kind of steer you towards. And it's a very sophisticated thing. Look, I'm not as smart as the CIA guys, I'll admit it, but I know how they operate, right? They're very smart people. They know psychology way better than I do. Probably some of the best psychologists in the world.
I would agree with that. And Philly Special actually just asked you, JJ, did you get clearance for this? It said,
well, Philly Special's my handler, everybody. All right. I have to confess.
That's funny. Yes, everyone go follow JJ. He should break 1,000 after this. I agree. I still got your page up here for people that have just found the live. This is JJ, State of the Deep, just started his channel. He's been a guest on the Hive here once before. And so it's awesome to see you got your own channel, JJ.
And I think it's safe to say, and I think we both agree that you and I think alike. Yeah, we tend to look at big picture stuff.
It's one of my favorite things to do. It's literally one of my favorite conversations to have with somebody else is big picture, theoretically speaking, based on other patterns. I genuinely enjoy that. It's one of my favorite conversations to have.
And we've had some offline. We've definitely had some conversations offline about some crazy stuff. And I'm okay with I'll formulate a theory in my head based on strictly on possibilities, right? Like X, Y, or Z. Is this possible? But if I play it out, I question it, and I kind of play it out of my mind, and I use the Socratic method. I attack it. I see if it holds up to scrutiny, and and if it doesn't, I go at it. No, that's not what I think it is, And I think you do the same thing. And all I care about, Birdie, is we are in a bad place in the world. I really believe that. And I want, if I can get anybody to kind of have an awakening about what it really is all about, it's about us, regular people. And I grew up very humble, life. It's working class. It's regular people versus elites. It's not me versus my neighbor because they believe something differently than I do. And people will say, "What the hell does that have to do with the Idaho 4?" It has a lot to do with it. Because what has happened in this case? Pro burgers versus guilters, right? It's always dividing people into groups.
Yep. It is. I agree. And we were labeled right away, which labeling and dividing, it's another very common tactic. I mean, when has there ever been, this is a serious question because I don't know, but when has there ever been, or has there ever been a murder case where people are labeled guilters or pro burgers? That seems like kind of like marketing, as weird as that
Sure.
sounds.
It's classic, bro. It's divide and conquer,
Yeah.
right? And I wanted to point one other thing out since I'm starting to loosen up a little bit here.
I love it. I love it.
Um, it's to me, when you can divide people, they're they're fighting each other. And what does that amount to? If you zoom out even further, a distraction,
True.
right? Because they're not going and looking at the people that should be questioned, right? Which is the mainstream media, the law enforcement, the university, right? They start going after each other, and that by default is a distraction. Here's what I would like to throw out there to everybody in the Hive. I've done it. I've looked into it a little bit. This is just for an exercise, right? Go look at what was going on in the world in previous to November of 2022 and right after it. Just pay attention. Go look at some of what were the big media things going on at that time. One of them was the Ukraine war. That was one of them. But
The border was
the
a big
border.
push.
So look at, because if people don't think that the power structure carries out operations as a distraction to the public, I think probably a lot of people in the Hive know this because you guys seem to be on the same page with how I think and how Birdie thinks. But look at that stuff. That's what I look at in a case like this. I don't do that with, something that seems pretty cut and dried. Like, there might be corruption on a smaller scale, like in a case, or incompetence or whatever. But when I see the signs of an operation, I go, all right, what was going on? What are they trying to distract us from? And what's going to come out of this?
So I looked up a list of things from a big picture in the months leading up. Okay. I'm going to rattle them off here. We had the war in Ukraine, the energy sabotage with the Nord Stream pipeline, inflation and aggressive Fed rate hikes, Roe v. Wade being overturned, midterm election chaos, FBI and classified document scandals, Elon Musk took over Twitter, massive fears about misinformation coming off of COVID, FTX collapsing 2 days before the murder. That's odd that that's actually on this list. January 6th, the final report, the China spy balloon panic, the police accountability outrage after Tyree Nichols, ChatGPT launching and changing the information landscape. So the Idaho 4 case, to say it simply, did not happen in a calm media environment.
And what I'm sure AI didn't mention which your chat is mentioning is the COVID stuff or the pandemic, however you choose
Yeah,
to
I just saw
look at
somebody
it.
type that. Yep.
Right. So that's one I didn't want to mention it, but that's a big one, right?
So right after the murders, so late November, we had the World Cup that began, big sporting event, distraction. And we had so the January 6th committee released its final report on December 22nd after interviewing more than 1,000 witnesses, millions of pages of documents. Koberger was arrested, 8 days later. But I don't know if that I guess that does clear the news cycle. It gives it 8 days, right? I mean, because the Idaho 4 murders were on every screen.
Right. Well, think about it. Let's think about this. Think about just this. Don't even read into what I'm about to say.
Okay. All right.
You have 4 attractive young college students, right? That are active on social media. Wouldn't that, we know how society works. We know what influencers, that whole culture, right? That would draw a lot of online people on social media, YouTube, TikTok, so on and so forth, right? And of course, the mainstream media, because we know how society works, young, attractive kids. So if you really want to go crazy with theories, yeah, you can run with that angle too. And so I don't, again, nothing would surprise me. And I that's why I get frustrated sometimes when I talk people are speaking about the documents, because my handler there,
Philly special, Philly girl.
Philly Special, was on the Devil's Advocate stream one night. She came up and she said, because I was saying documents can be manipulated. And the reality is, if there's national security implications, they can completely manipulate documents. I mean, they can do that. There's nothing anybody can do about it if it's blanketed under national security in any way. And however they may do that is many, many ways they could do that. So that's why I get frustrated sometimes with, I've looked at the documents too. I've followed all the, Reddit groups and Facebook groups, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I prefer looking at video, because I can look at the video and see suspicious things that I think might have been manipulated easier than looking at a document. There's nothing that is a dead giveaway that it was manipulated.
Blue Eyed Candy brings up another good point too, just in general with the documents and the transcripts. Subtle Tell DM kept using the word, quote, obviously, when speaking to Gooch, like she already knew her background. And I'm going to take that a step further and generalize it a little bit, Blue Eyed Candy, and talk about the linguistics in general. I know that the new book, or not the new book, but the book that's new to me, Maddie Mogan's Last Message to the World, the guest theory, they did a breakdown of the linguistics of the probability of certain things, being said or coached. Was it natural? And the lack of the mention of blood in the 911 call was like 90-10 or 80-20, that it was most likely coached to not be brought up. And there's so many things like that in the documents, not just with people talking, but there's ways that things are phrased and that are said that it's written in a certain way. And I don't think it's just legal language all of the time. I think it's purposeful omission.
I agree. And man, thank you guys so much for the support. I honestly, man, I really appreciate that. It's really nice of you, Birdie, to give me some big ups. I appreciate it very much.
You're the man. You're the man. And people, it's so refreshing, not just talking about this, but when you do get a little bit outside of the inside the scene, inside the house, it's good. I think it personally helps me a lot reset mentally and kind of get away from the day-to-day just grind of, I've been staring at this now every night, all of these photos, all of this footage. And so I hope a lot of people in here would echo that. But yeah, JJ, I appreciate you, man. I was stoked to have you on this evening. And I like, you had said when we talk offline,
Yeah.
great chats.
And look, I mean, since I'm not pulling punches, think about what legislation, because remember, thank you very much. Cassandra Complex. I didn't catch the whole thing, but
It's Cassandra Complex. Just trust me.
trust me, bro. Yeah, just trust me, bro. We're the experts.
Yep.
I think that, and there's Jeff H.
You guys know what to do, Hive.
We
Let
got
them fly.
we got everybody here tonight.
Yes.
I think about this, right? If you pass legislation, and once legislation is passed, then it sets a precedent, right? So then more legislation is likely to follow. Wouldn't it be great for the powers that be to deny citizens the ability to investigate what they're being told? Because that would be really useful for them down the road if they wanted to do some crazy distraction operations and carry out false flags, right? That would be a really effective way to limit people's ability to do their own research.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. And it's something that I've touched on, a handful of streams. But if you think big picture and you think not just what are some events that are going on that we hear about in the news, but what about in legislation? So lobbyists, how much did the FBI lobby to be able to use IgG as evidence, right? We saw them break their own guidelines. And so we know that America never lets a good crisis go to waste. It's something that I've said more than I typically have as of late, because there are things that are going to come out of this case. I've called it. I've said there's going to be a Koberger law, or there's going to be some law that comes out of this case, whether if it's pertaining to the DNA or if it's pertaining to the protection of victims' rights. There's going to be. It's just a matter of when.
Sure. And I want people to start thinking like that, because again, we're regular people, man. Like, we work, we do our hobbies, we're busy, we do our stuff, and we're living life. Good people are not trying to figure out ways to screw people. No. Right? We're like, I would never want to be these elites. They're money grubbing sociopaths, man. It's disgusting.
I feel like it's something different than money. I don't know if people are going to agree with this. Once you get to a certain point of wealth, like if you're talking the top 2%, you're not chasing money anymore. You're chasing something completely different. I don't even know if it's power, because the amount of power at that level too is absurd, just over employees at that point, or people that probably work underneath you. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's just financial, and I don't think it's just power.
Yeah. All right. So I tend to, I agree. I tend to like money. I sort of lump that in with power and accessibility to anything you want. Right. So I agree. Once you get to a certain level of wealth, it doesn't matter. But here's an even bigger way to look at it. Once you're part of the elite class, the elites protect each other. So you get to a level of protection, right? So the government is not going to investigate you. We look at the things Bill Gates has been involved in. Look at some of the things. I don't know if you guys know this. Some of you guys probably do, but years ago, Amazon signed a deal with the intelligence agencies to store data. Well, guess what? Whose data is all over Amazon? Our data, citizens' data.
JJ, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have the most massive online platform for e-commerce, steal all of our data and have our phones listening to us. I'm sure that there's a massive protection clause in there for the people that they love and care for so much.
I know. I'm crazy. I told you guys I'm crazy. I'm crazy, but it's just all right. So I wish I could remember who said this. It might come to me at some point during the stream, and I'll tell you guys if I remember. Once you get to that level, you can't be a degenerate out in the regular world. So you need an island. You need these secret meetings around the world that the elites all go to, Bilderberg and the Atlantic Council and this Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum, all these things. But let's go off track for a minute. It's all connected though. Why would people need a guy like Epstein? Because the people in the know out there know who he really worked for. And it's not the conspiracy theory that some people think. It's a much bigger one, who he actually worked for. Whitney Webb's a good resource if you want to dig into that stuff. But so one of the things that he did is he provided things for these elites that they can't just go out and do in the regular world, right? Because they have to be protected.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, you look at Jeffrey Epstein is a great example of looking at how an intelligence community, government-backed funding, massive amounts of black budget money can prop somebody up and have them influence the most powerful people in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are ready to accept that there are tax dollars that funded some of the horrible things that Jeffrey Epstein and people connected to him did. Like, is America ready to accept that? Is the rest of the world ready to accept that there is a black budget fund of taxpaying dollars that went to enable essentially this behavior?
Right. And I wanted to comment, Philly Special. It's actually higher up than that. What
did Philly Special say?
She said Mossad. That's what I was referring to when I said it's not what some people think it was. It goes as high as it goes. Think of what is the most powerful family in the world for hundreds of years.
It starts with an Rockefellers.
Yeah, it is. No, it's Rothschild. Yep. He worked for the Rothschild family. Not my theory. It's been reported on before, but the mainstream media is never going to report on it. All right. I'm going to say the biggest, most important thing that I talk about, period. I'm going to say, I don't even think I've talked about it. I might have mentioned it once on my own channel.
Let's hear it.
This is the biggest thing. When you hear there is a part of narrative, I call it narrative shifting. And this is how it works, in my opinion, but I think I'm right. Here's number one.
I love that.
Number one, Epstein committed suicide. That's official narrative number one, right?
Yep.
What was the other narrative? He was murdered, right? In my opinion, those are both official narratives. From day one, I said he's alive. Duh, obviously.
South Beach.
What they do is they present you with two. What's the other one? Wet market, lab leak. It's neither. And I'm not going to talk about my theory on that on here. And I will get to it one day because I want to be able to provide receipts. But they present two narratives that appear as counter narratives, i.e., broken plea, that are neither. It's really, there are alternate narratives that, what do the two opposing narratives do? They prevent people from looking at, or a lot of people, most people, from looking at other possible narratives because it's controlled opposition, because there's this opposing narrative that seemingly opposes the official narrative. So it placates people.
It is a perceived choice, and it is entangled throughout our entire society, and it has been for centuries, and it most likely will always continue to be. You know, it really will be.
Yeah. And look, these guys, I joke about this all the time. Now, I know I'm not as smart as the CIA, but I joke. I actually commented to the CIA on X, and I said, you guys need to hire me to come up with better psyops, because I always joke about, like, I know their psyops before they even think of them, because I've predicted so many things that were going to happen. And so that's a big one. So look at the Idaho 4 case. So I'll tie it back in.
Okay.
we've been given what? All these different potential narratives. Now, what did these recent quote unquote whistleblowers that we've been talking about, what did they do? They presented alternative narratives. But what does that do? It steers a lot of people away from looking into other narratives outside of that scope.
It's a great point. What do you think is the number one alternative narrative or alternate narrative, excuse me, that they do not want people to talk about? Like if you had to theorize on, because I feel like you're really good at like what you just brought up with Epstein and the Mossad angle, and you actually went towards the Rothschilds. Like, is there some sort of comparison, maybe an analogy that you could say for the Idaho 4 for narratives?
Yeah, but I'm almost afraid to say it.
Why? Let it rip.
Oh man.
Is it actually like when you say afraid to say it? Like obviously, I trust your judgment on it, but I'm very curious. And I
Well,
think you
some of
piqued the
my
interest.
theories would be very unflattering to some people in the periphery of the case, and I
Well, let's
don't.
let it. That's what we're for here. Debate.
I mean, I'll just frame it this way. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm talking about possibilities,
Yeah.
right? We know that two of the families of victims got involved with high level stuff after the case. Now, DA and I were sitting at the Othram Labs presentation at last year's Crime Con, and I immediately was like, I looked into who was funding Othram. That's the first thing that I did. And one of the biggest funders of Othram Labs was GigaFund, which is who funds all of Elon Musk's projects. And we all know that Elon Musk has a lot of contracts with the intelligence community and the government, right? So, all right, so let's get into this now. This is it. This is the shit right here, Birdie.
All right, I'm ready, man. You got
All
me
right,
at the edge of the seat.
what are some theories we've all heard about? We've talked about, all of us.
I'll throw
Drug
some up on the screen.
trafficking, right?
Yep.
Drug, a CI, right, in the house, or more than one potentially. The frats, that's a big one. Those are
Cartel.
probably two of the biggest, I would argue, right? They're probably two of the biggest. You could start going a little bit outside, and was Kopaka somehow involved? That's another one. We can go. I mean, I know all the main theories.
Crypto, ritual.
See
Right?
all right. I wanted to talk about the ritual one real quick. I don't think that was it, only because I think then the two surviving roommates didn't need to be in the picture, because they needed to have, like, I think that they would have used them differently, in my opinion, without going too deep down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
But
I don't want to distract you with that one because I wanted to hear what you were going to say before, but
yeah, I mean, I think I think we'd all agree the two biggest ones are drug hit or something related to that, and the frats. Those have been
Yeah.
pervasive for a while.
I would agree.
But right. Now, here's the thing, man. Information comes out a lot of times very strategically, because they know what people look at. They know the true crime community is going to be digging into stuff, right? So those two things do what? They focus the people's energy into still in that area. Yes, the drug angle is wider and broader, but it's still, all right, drug trafficking in that area through that part of the country. But it focuses people's attention to that. So when I see these narratives, that the way that the information came out and the way things happen, and how a lot of the interviews, drugs came up in discussions and so on and so forth, I tend to go, okay, this is what the public is seeing. And I believe when there's national security implications, they can manipulate what the public sees. Right. They could look, why can't we get certain other information? Why are certain things redacted? Right. So that is one of the things that tends to make me look at, was there some kind of an operation to push bigger agendas? Now, you could say, was it never let a good crisis go to waste, or was it create a crisis and,
Yeah,
problem, reaction, solution, right?
exactly.
So I don't know. I'm not sure about that, in this case, but I think it's something that people should be aware of.
Well, let's get to what you were going to say now, because I had said, what do you think is the biggest alternate theory outside of those two now? Did you have a specific thing? I know you talked about the funding that with Othram Labs, right? And it's Elon Musk's company. It's Giga. I can never say the last part of it. I always
Giga fund.
Giga Fund. Yeah.
Well, all right. So one of the bigger ones out there is the WITSEC extraction,
Right.
right? Which,
I feel like that's been talked about enough where you could say it, and I've said this as a counter just before you start, JJ. That would be the best case scenario, is if something worked and it saved lives and it rolled up and got people off the street that were putting out a hit. I can wrap my head around it. Not everybody else can. If you're triggered or offended because of a conversation about things that do line up with pattern recognitions, I guess this would be like a little disclaimer and a warning, right? We don't know. We're never going to know, but we certainly don't know the truth as it stands today. And I don't know about you all, but I am very curious to hear how JJ explains this. And if you are too, let's get some ones in the chat. Give JJ a little bit of confidence that he's safe here to speak his mind openly and freely here, because I want to hear what you have to say on this.
yeah. Well, another scenario is that certain entities knew that something was going to go down at that house and they let it happen because they had an agenda that could have most likely already in place in that area. Hence the funding and research going on in that area for off-campus crime and so on and so forth. So that's sort of a combination of, you know, not don't let a good crisis go to waste and create a crisis, right? Because if
Yeah.
you create a scenario where something's going to happen, you might not be the one orchestrating the actual tragedy, but like you maybe let it happen because there are big entities at play. A more charitable take on that would be the crimes happened and people swooped in because they saw an opportunity, right? To maximize uh, forwarding an agenda. But another the craziest one of the craziest theories that, and this is just thinking about possibilities. I'm not saying that this
You
is
got
what
it.
I is my strongest thing. I just want to make that very clear. It's a possibility,
Yep.
right? As far as
Understood.
operations go. If you wanted to forward an agenda, so I've said this in the past, rather than a WITSEC extraction, you find some attractive kids who are active on social media who may have already been involved in a cooperative or operation within the area, and you extract them not because they were at risk, but you extract them so you can present this horrific crime as a way to forward those agendas. Now I know that's out there, but that's one of my
We're stretching out there, but that's what we do.
and
I can
it's
wrap my head around it.
there's only one other crazy option, and I don't even need to say it. You guys, I'll hint at it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's been done in the past where people have been. It's like, all right, I'll give the example, and you guys will be able to connect the dots very easily.
Okay.
Anytime we go into a military operation, not even a war, any military action in around the world, the government has like actuaries. They assess risk. They know if we do this, there's going to be X amount of collateral damage and X amount of blowback in the media and PR and all this kind of stuff. They know, they calculate it in advance. And then they make a decision, and they still go through with it. And they know that in the case of military, innocent people will die, right? They know that in advance, but they still do it. Okay. So would they do that? I mean, they already do that. So You get what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. It's a calculated risk of the loss of human life, and does it outweigh what they stand to gain? And it's a wild dynamic to talk about, but with your reference to the military and certain operations on a smaller scale, you could break that down, I'm sure, mission by mission, right? What is the operational risk? Are we going to take casualties? Are we expecting it? From a standpoint of getting into wars, I don't know if that has to even be explained with events like Pearl Harbor, Gulf of Tonkin, 9/11. There's a handful of them that it's so crazy to say out loud, and it's not like I'm the only person to have said this, or like I don't necessarily believe it as you say, JJ, but would the United States government kill 3,000 of their own citizens to get into a war in the Middle East because of that said potential benefit? I don't know. Would they know it's going to come and then they let it go? Have they done that in the past? Is there historical things that have happened in ways where it would lead people to hear that and say, well, that's actually not that crazy given what has played out a handful of times?
Sure. And you have to look at context of the past, right? Can't look at it separate. You have to look at precedent from the past. And so when I was in college, I took a class because I was a psych major, but I studied also forensic psychology, abnormal psychology, and sociology as well, and a lot of different stuff along those lines. And one of the classes that I took my senior year was called Conflict and Violence, and it was taught by a retired special agent for the FBI. And we would have a lot of discussions in that class about some pretty dark stuff, because talking about literally conflict and violence. I mean, this guy like was undercover with motorcycle gangs and stuff like that. Like that you had talked about that.
Scott Payne guy, yeah.
Yeah, this guy was much older, so it would have been like probably in the 70s or whatever. And one day we were having a discussion and he talked about something that I talk about now, is that a lot of his words at the time, it's a well-founded, sort of well-regarded theory among high-level law enforcement and intelligence that high-level politicians and CEOs are sociopaths or psychopaths, right? And if you think about that, it makes a lot of sense, right? You would need people like that, including in the intelligence community. There's a lot of people who've talked about what type of people they hire in operations in intelligence, right? They want people who can cross certain boundaries, right? They want, because that's what they need people to do, So if you take that and you have to look at things and you superimpose them over things we've seen in the world, right? The amount of crazy corruption and evil that we've all seen. And you have to put it in context. Why would it be this is where I break a lot from the true crime community. Why would you separate the big picture from the small picture? Everything's connected. Because what do they all include? They all include humans. People are people. We all are subject to our own issues, our own pathologies, our own behaviors. We're all, nobody is above that. And so you have to look at that and you have to be able to say, you can't say, no, that's crazy. That's no way that could go on. But why? You have to look at reality and you have to be able to accept reality. And it's a scary thing. It causes a lot of cognitive dissonance. I think that's why so many people have a difficult time to try to conceive of the Idaho 4 case being anything other than the lone gunman, quote unquote, right? The lone gunman theory.
You bring up an interesting point about that. Is there some sort of block? And I think it's a question that people, myself included, you included, everybody has to ask themselves. If we were to just focus on the Idaho 4 case, is there a theory that if you were to not be able to tell a lie to yourself, is there a theory that you want it to be more than you'd want the truth, just because in your mind you've thought about something a certain way for a very long period of time? I mean, I could probably honestly answer that if I was to say, to take my number one theory, right? And you could plug in whatever it is. And I've looked into and I've spent so much time. Would it be a little bit hard for me to accept that it could be anything else? Because now there's things that come in to play, like the effort, the time, the maybe the ego standpoint of it. How would you respond to that?
You mean like having trouble sort of like pushing back on myself, kind of
Yeah,
like what
like
I think?
yeah, not maybe because you might not recognize that you could be missing something to
Right.
connect the dot to a different theory because you've just put in so much time on a certain one.
But also because of cognitive dissonance, right? Because I may have a certain view of the world, and so no, I think that every human being is susceptible to that, right? If you're too invested in something, then it's very difficult to change course. And like it would be hard for me to change course mainly because I don't trust any information that I think is going to come out about this case. Because once, if it is what I think it is, I just don't think we're ever going to get the truth anytime soon at all. And I don't even mean in a couple of years. I just don't believe that. Because think about the cases from the past, like JFK and so on and so forth. We still don't have the truth, so I don't know if I could believe anything that might come out down the road. So I don't know, man. I think if I personally looked at a bunch of information that changed my mind, that wasn't spoon fed to me, then I could change my mind. But I haven't seen that as of yet, including Broken Plea, including Brent Turvey, including Holland's information that came out. So I read Broken Plea. I got an advanced copy like you did. I read it in like short order, and
So did
it
I.
did not change my mind.
I think that it is just because we've followed the case so closely. When you do hear something so different, right? Like, no, it was Jack that called Kaylee, or oh, there was hair in Ethan's hand, right? Like, there are things that are like shocking, like, wow, like how are we just hearing about this from a book? But I think that there's also the separation and kind of the compartmentalization to what you're saying is, does that really change your mind though? If you're able to zoom out and think bigger picture, maybe controlled opposition. And obviously that's what this conversation is about this evening, which leads me to ask you this question. This is something that I've brought up on the stream. I don't know how to really prove it or if you ever could, but it's a good talking point to go along with what we're discussing tonight. And that is the perfect news ready picture of all six roommates together. No one else. It was literally that day while Kaylee's back in town, allegedly after not being back in town. It's right. I could say, or you could say it's maybe perfectly edited for the news and channels that post it, but this said that it made Cassandra complex. Just trust me. Think along the lines of your theory.
Yeah. Well, it ties in with the big picture, right? Because it's like they're presenting this picture to the public. These Look at all these happy, attractive college kids. You know, I wanted to address the 17-minute call, right? Now, what I said earlier, I'm going to tie it into one of the first things I said is people frame things, right? Like true crime, they're framing it in a certain way. So you would be inclined to be like, oh, wait, why was he lying about the phone call or what's up with that? But there are other scenarios in which a former couple would have a longish phone call on a particular night, which, if something else was going to happen and they might not see each other, you know, that would
Explaining it,
right.
explaining the situation.
And again, I'm just
Yeah, we're just
we're
talking.
right. We're just think tanking. Like we're kind of just theorizing possibilities. That's all.
Yeah, and there's been theories that have come up. Blue Eyed Candy's talked about, like, was the 17-minute phone call where Kaylee was trying to find Murphy and they were talking about where could the dog be, right? And so there's theories on no, this is you could actually hear the FaceTime call and it says that it was answered. You could hear it on the 1112. JJ, you just brought up a different, theory as to what could that call be about. It's an unfortunate realization when you come to the understanding that if we don't know what that 17-minute phone call was about by now, with an interview, with phone records, and all the other documents, I don't know if we're ever going to know the contents of that discussion. So it's always going to be open for speculation, which I think a vast majority of the very, what's the word I'm looking for? The very sought after questions most of us have. I think, unfortunately, they're going to end up in that category. We might have a better idea as to what they could be. And I hope that we do as the case progresses. But to know exactly what was said on that 17-minute phone call, we're never going to know, I don't think. Do you?
Well, what about Maddie? What did you say to Adam? That's another one we don't know.
Huge one.
Right. And so, yeah, we're probably never going to get, there's information that I don't think we'll ever get. Why were they trying to downplay the OnlyFans thing so hard? Right? Like, that's one thing that I always didn't understand. It's tons of college age women have OnlyFans. It's not like some crazy idea.
I've always thought about that. The OnlyFans thing to me too is it's so normalized now, right? So it is odd, to your point. Like, why downplay that? I remember even when I was in high school, it was like if a nude got leaked, there was people that would transfer. Now it's like people will post it for the price of a McDouble on the internet for thousands to see. I'm not shaming or saying one way or the other. I'm just saying the reality is ultimately in society, it's become widely accepted. It's widely known. And so, yeah, that was really kind of, it was pushed down. It was contained as long as they could.
Yeah. And then what do I do? Why? In society today, that I know there's like working, comedians that have the female comedians that have OnlyFans. It's like, it's not some crazy thing. Oh my God, they had an OnlyFans. So
Right.
that is narrative shaping, right? Because that, for a lot of people, that might sway their perception of these people that are being presented to the world, right? As like these college kids in the prime of their life, which they were, And so I just never understood that. It's like, okay, they one or more of them. Here's one of the questions I always have. In that interview with Bethany, was there any like people like selling pictures of their feet? She says, "Oh, there might have been some of that going on, but I wasn't involved in any of that." Why wouldn't the person interviewing them say, "Okay, well, was it happening or not?" Like, that's pretty important. If you're trying to investigate what avenues these people might have triggered somebody, a potential killer, why wouldn't you say that's a major thing? Oh, okay, well, were they or were they not? And who was doing it? That would be a major thread to pull in an investigation.
And I apologize for my immaturity laughing because that's a very great point. But what do we always say? It's like you never ask questions you know the answer to. And I was about to just blurt out, like, because they're on Feet Finder already. They know. They know that was happening.
I mean, yeah, right. They may. I agree. They.
I'm just kidding.
But like, for the sake of an interview, right. I agree. They might have already known. But when you're interviewing somebody, you want to get them, because you want to see what they're willing to tell you and what they prevaricate on, right? A real interview of somebody in a crime situation, now maybe that was enough for them, but that happened in like across all the interviews. It's like they didn't push on things, which is just very strange to me. And another thing, I think it's very effective to use incompetence as an excuse for why things aren't done the way they're supposed to. I think it can be in government. We see it a lot, right? They chalk it up to, oh, these useless so-and-sos or those useless so-and-sos on that side or this side or whatever. I think it's very convenient. It's a convenient way to hide corruption.
Well said. It's something that I personally have said for certain topics in this case where I've said that's just blatant, they're not capable of doing it. But I've also said that it's so
See, they don't want me and Birdie talking, guys. I don't think it's Birdie's cable. So I don't know if I'm frozen too, but I'll wait until Birdie comes back and I'll say I think there's a lot of things that are used as cover for corruption. And corruption could be many different things. It could be on a smaller scale, it could be local, it can be much bigger. And it's really easy to explain away obvious things in a case or investigations. I mean, we can use many examples we've seen in the last several years with the Epstein files and things like that, where it would be very easy to chalk it up to incompetence or lower level corruption, right? Yeah, there's always the sacrificial lambs that get, they basically take the heat. And that's part, I think, when you get into the power structure, you have to know your level and know your place. That there may come a time where you have to take the fall for something bigger. Birdie's back.
Yeah, if that happens again, JJ, just keep going. It's not you, it's me. I'm so sorry, guys. But I was able to listen on my phone, and I agree. You're gonna have to take the fall for it at a certain point. And is it in general? One of the other theories is like, did Brian Koberger get voluntold to do this? Right? I've often questioned with the partnership with the Pullman PD that we've seen the emails for. Again, it's somewhat of a paper trail. Is it legit? Is it not? Did he get the job? Why can't they comment on it? Now, I've wondered, would it have been anybody who got that position would be in Brian Koberger's spot right now? Was that a built-in thing with the funding to have this $80,000 a year partnership to get very highly qualified, skilled criminology, psychology people into a role that have to be vetted by Dr. David Macon, who has done plenty of NIJ funding and has had a very successful teaching career? Was that a ploy to essentially softly recruit people that would be qualified to do this? I don't know.
Yeah, and part of my overarching theory that BK is an operative is that he could have been brought in. Look, we're never going to know if he applied to one of the agencies, right? We talked about this before. So he could have already applied for something, and maybe even at the very least, like an internship while he's in school. And they say, we're calling you up to the big leagues. This is what we need you to do. Right. And if that's the path you want to go down, get into operations, then you do it. I think that's what happened with Tyler Robinson.
That's a deep rabbit hole too, man. I mean, it's not by chance that all of these cases that stay in the news have the same questions all of the time, the same oddities. How are they linked? They're just off by a few degrees, but there's so many similarities in the pattern recognition, as you've said. And what I think is also, there's two lenses to look through, two main lenses, I should say. Because if you were to look through, is an innocent man in prison, right? If that's like the main question, I don't think you can make the case just about that one question, because there's two kind of parting questions that goes off of that, right? Now, is he innocent of the crime? Would be one. And what would you say the other is? Is he willingly innocent in there?
Right. Well, that's one of the things, because I have seen a lot of people in different chats say Patsy, but I say witting Patsy.
Witting is a massive distinction between that too.
And before we go further, I gotta pee. I've been drinking seltzer water. I'll be right back, Birdie.
That's all right. It'll give you some time to dive into the chat. And I always say that my dog's on the roof instead of saying I have to pee. All right, man. I'll see you in a bit.
I'm right back.
Yep. Man, JJ's great. And guys, I'm so sorry about the internet connection. I already wrote it down again to get on that as quick as I can. Again, it's not bothering me as much because my wife is okay after tripping, so it makes it a little bit more digestible with that. Accomplished Day said, I emailed the timeline and a few other things that I've posted in Reddit recently. I also uploaded a copy of the timeline to Discord. Dude, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Accomplished Day. If you didn't see the stream last night, we had somebody in the Hive send us Accomplished Day's timeline, which is, it would actually make MPD or any timeline that you've probably ever seen in this case look not so good. And so let me just make a note of that. Thank you again. Detective Armchair 85, love the username. Welcome to Hive Plus. Pineapple Diana, this is towards JJ. Say thank you for being in the Hive tonight. I love theories. Fun fact: I sat in for an education training with the DEA agent Steve Murphy, one of the two that got Pablo Escobar. Love learning. Now that is an icebreaker. That's badass. I'm always curious about, when you hear a story about somebody that did something crazy like that, did they, like, what were they like when you met them? Were they just completely normal? Could you tell they were a hard ass? That's crazy, Pineapple Diana. You're back.
Is it too late to say I got my dog off the roof?
Nope. We'll count it. And so to go back to our topic that we were doing there about how the case is not just about that one question of, is an innocent man in prison, right? Is it a true mistake, a true wrongful conviction? Is it a willing patsy? Is it some sort of operation angle, right? And it's even funneled more, both of those. So it's like main question splits the two, and then it comes back to one for the sake of our discussion that ultimately exposes these patterns, which is, what did the official story prevent us from getting the truth on or investigating further? And that's what a lot of these cases come back to, is what do they prevent you from being able to investigate? And a lot of times, I think that this is fairly obvious, that's where the truth lies.
I'm just going to say it straight up. I think the most basic aspects of the case are not true. I think, why would we believe anything about this case with all of the inconsistencies and shady stuff?
It's a great question.
It's just a basic logic. Like, the videos look like they're manipulated. I've said that. You've said that. You've looked into it way deeper than I have, but I've thought that for a long time. Some of the documents, it just don't add up to me. They seem to be steering, and so just, if you would just use basic logic, if they've lied about so many things or misled, I'll just be more charitable about so many things, why would we believe even the most basic stuff? We were lied to from day one. They were all sleeping. How many things from the day one have been complete, essentially fabrications? So why would we believe that anything we've been told is the truth? It's just, again, I know that's getting a little sort of away from the specific details of the case, but to me, I can't trust anything we've been told. I did want to throw this out there because I don't know if I've talked to you about this, Birdie. Oh, yeah, I think I may have offline. I would love to see somebody interview the three people that we were talking about earlier and forget all the haze and the smoke and mirrors and just ask the most basic questions, like we're starting from day one. How many victims were there? Were there any gunshot wounds? Because remember, no one's going to offer information to the public if they already know the public is kind of going down a certain road.
Of course.
So they can choose what stuff to talk about and what to point to. But what I would do, just the way my brain works, is it would sound ridiculous to some people because, oh no, that we know that information. But I would ask them at the very least to see what their response was, right? How they respond to the question, like, how many bodies were there? Like, do you think the 911 call was authentic? Or, I think that you might have asked that question.
Well, I've asked that, and I've even starting to think that about the plea deal. The plea deal feels like this containment shield of cross-examination of experts debating each other about what went down with the DNA in the labs and chain of custody, the house and the layout. Is the timeline possible, right? Like that plea deal shielded all of that from being discussed and debated. And it I don't even know how else to say that. It just feels too convenient amongst so many other things.
And look, when I was on with the DA crew when Whitcomb came on, right? I was not going to challenge him. It's not my stream. I'm not going to derail the discussion. What I did, I asked one or two key questions, and as soon as I saw the way he responded to those questions, I could see what was going on. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to sit back and I'm just going to listen. I'm going to do what I do with everything. I'm going to analyze what I think. I'm going to use my gut instincts. I did that with every interview that was done with all of those three people, with Holland, with Turvey, and with Whitcomb. That's just my nature to do that. I wasn't going to be like calling somebody out because look, what is that going to get you? It's just going to cause tension and it's not going to be productive.
Right. Yeah. You want to interview them, right? You're trying to interview them and you're trying to hear their perspective on it. Now there's a time and a place for a debate, but I don't know if a quote unquote like book.
Damn, they got to Birdie again. I'm going to have to steal the Birdie Bombshell stream for now. Okay, so going down that road, he had Whitcomb on, right? You guys, everybody saw Birdie's interview. He's interviewing somebody. I wouldn't have expected, like certain creators were like attacking the people who interviewed Whitcomb, but I get it. I went through it. I had questions. I wanted to push, but it wasn't my place. And the guy's promoting a book. He's giving access to people. Same with Turvey, same with Holland, right? Some people pushed and on certain things and not others. And so I get that. People were trying to interview the guy. It's not I'm not a moron where I would think, oh, what do you didn't push this guy, you didn't question him. What are you gonna do? If there's like operations going on, do you think they're gonna come out and admit it? No, of course not. I mean, think about this. If it's their job, if I worked for the CIA, like some people think I do, oh man, I probably shouldn't have said that. Then I would have a job to do, right? Or if I worked for an agency, I would have a job to do. Birdie had a job to do interviewing this guy. What are you going to do? I'm just trying to tie it back into talking about Whitcomb. Good thing I like to talk, Birdie.
No, I appreciate it, bro. Yeah, I was stuck in like the help me sign, oddly enough. Yeah, but there's a time and a place, right? You don't obviously want to offend a guy who agreed to come onto your show to do an interview to talk about the case. And he was going to offer obviously some things that were different than what we've heard. And so,
yeah,
you got to be respectful at the same point.
Dude, I get it. You know, like you don't think I talked to DA before that interview? I'm not going to be like, are you going to hammer this? What I would say to anybody is just, you can ask strategic questions or you can strategically pay attention, right, to the way people respond, because you can get a lot from that. What do they steer away from? What do they want to talk about? You know, I'm not a moron. Like I said, I wouldn't derail an interview where someone's giving you their time, you know, because I was a little bit suspicious. You know, you have to be strategic.
Yes, I agree. And I think too, so I kind of want to get back to the conspiracy angle, if that's what you even want to call it. Sometimes I feel like conspiracy, a lot of people think it's everyone's in the same room planning this. And it could really just be a term that I've heard. I'm not coining this, but it's like incentive convergence.
Absolutely. 100. I just talked about this. Like, if you look back in history And we've all heard of the Freemasons and the Illuminati and all these different factions, and it goes even bigger than that. But if you look at those things, and I've been doing some reading on that stuff, one thing that happens everywhere along the line, and you see it over, I'm talking hundreds of years back, is power factions will co-opt smaller power factions to serve their own purposes. For example, Freemasonry started to gain traction in England, and it was creating resistance to the crown, right? So rather than try to squash it, the crown said, yeah, I know what we'll do. We'll just kind of get in bed with them, right? Because it'll serve our purposes. And that has happened throughout history, right? So converging interests, shared agendas, right? That would benefit both. We see it today a lot. Why do you think all of a sudden all these big tech people that were staunch Democrats all of a sudden partnered with Trump, right? All these big tech oligarchs. That's the way it works. That's the way it's always worked.
And the specific to this case, I mean, let's try to rattle some, incentive convergence off. The police need something closed. They need a case closed. The prosecutors need the case to hold up.
The university,
the IGG methods need to be proven true. You can argue that, in addition to the court, the families, as Josh Hurwitz said, they need finality. They need answers. Witnesses need to be protected. The university, to your point, the nightmare needs to be over with.
Of course. And I've talked about this a lot. The university, what is the university, every university tied to? The banking industry. Because student loans, the government doesn't provide that money. They just back that money. They insure it. So it's government-backed loans. But who's providing the money? It's all the big players, right? They all have investments in their portfolios. Student loans is one of them. So it's not only, oh my God, tuition, it's the interest on student loans that go on for how many years? 30 years? I mean, till you die, basically, till you pay it off, right? So that's big money. Now we're getting into a whole other realm. And what did Scott Green do before he worked at U of I? Do you know, Bertie?
I'm trying to remember. I thought you were going to go down the whole University of Phoenix.
Well, that's one of them.
Okay.
That's one.
What's the other one or what are you referring to?
Well, Scott Green was in global finance.
I actually don't know if I knew that.
That's what I looked into that stuff. That's what he did before. And because that's the way that I think. I was just like, let me see what outside connections there are. Right. And so, that there is like crazy, if you really think about it, this case is tied to, it already is. It irrefutably is tied to a much bigger picture because, it's kind of crazy. One of the things I've noticed with that sort of thing is that look at where a lot of politicians, right, that we've never heard of, and all of a sudden they're being foisted on the public. And you've never heard of them before, and now they're like stars in politics, and they get pushed along. Look at where they come from. A lot of them come from the banking world, private equity, and so on. So I don't think that's like an accident. I think when you have people that are lobbying for interests outside of what the obvious is, you should always be suspicious, and that's something that I think people need to start digging into. And that's how I have looked at the Idaho case. And I think every school, I'll give an example. Austin, right? UT is a massive university. It's also a big research university. There's big money involved with that school. Now, we know about the Lady Bird Lake, all the bodies that were found in Lady Bird Lake, and the police and local authorities kept denying there was a serial killer, right? Because what would happen if it got out that there was a serial killer operating for years in the Austin area. I mean, that would crush enrollment in the school. So what?
Tourism.
Tourism, huge. I was in Austin last year, man. It goes off. I mean, the place absolutely goes off. It's a hotbed of commerce. And the university's right there. So there's and I'm tying this in to exactly what you brought up, Bertie. The things that are tied, like why the reasoning why there would be these interests that are bigger than the obvious, like, oh, solving the crime and so on. You have enrollment in the school. You have all the money attached to that area. That school is basically all the commerce for that area. And it is a cool little area, I have to admit. Like it's a quaint little town, and it's cool, and there's the two colleges are close by, but outside of that, it's a very remote area. I mean, it's like 6 hours to Boise, or 5.5 hours from there. So it's pretty remote. So they're not going to let something, to your point, they got to close that up. They got to zip it and get it buttoned up, present a narrative to the public. And if there were, let's just exaggerate for a minute, even though I don't think it's an exaggeration. Let's say billions of dollars were on the line, including the Phoenix deal, right?
Yeah.
Billions of dollars. Do people not think operations get carried out over billions of dollars? Of course they do.
Probably tens of millions, right? Hundreds of millions for sure.
Billions. I'm talking about.
No,
yeah.
I know, but I'm saying billions. Of course, I would say yes. Of course it would. I would say it would probably happen with much less.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
I think that one of the things too, JJ, and I want to, just so you know, the internet keeps getting worse. So I want to answer the questions that people had in the chat too. And we'll get you back on, man. We're going to start doing this more often, hopefully, now that you got your channel up and running. And I love talking with you. This was a great conversation. I just want to leave people with one thing about this case, right? Closure can be healing. But you want to know what else it could be? It could be containment. For all of those things that we just said, their incentives from so many players would converge on. Closure can be healing, but closure can also be containment. And when you look at this case, what do you feel the closure is really trying to have settle? Is it the healing, or does it feel like containment? Because to me, it feels like containment. What about you?
Yeah, I think that whenever operations are involved, they never do it for one reason. They always maximize resources, and they do it for multiple reasons, right? Because you're not going to employ operations require a lot of effort and coordination. And I think when you have, like you were saying earlier, converging interests, then that would be a good motivation, right, for an operation. And so containment, putting things to bed, get on with life, money, finances tend to always trump everything, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I agree. I think it's a bunch of different things.
I'm going to do a poll for the chat here. Do you feel they are pursuing closure? And I'm going to say for containment or for healing. And I'm not going to say for both, because I feel like that's kind of a cop out in a way, because I don't think that for both is an even split, right? It could be both, but if we had to give it a percentage, I would say it's like 70-30 containment, 30% healing. Does that make sense?
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so 1 for containment, 2 for healing, because obviously there's going to be some dynamic of that, right, JJ? But I think if I put the option both up there, people would assume it's 50-50, and I don't think that it is.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that, like, look, man, I have to say mean words, okay? I don't think the power structure cares about healing. I would think containment would be more a motivation when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And with what we've seen play out, dude, the effort of the coordination in the media, that's not healing. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like it's rather obvious on its face. that's what the closure is needed for. The finality is publicly said for the healing, but really a lot of their actions are to contain. I don't
And
know many. Yeah,
Bertie, if the G's were confident in what they believed and they just want to get on with their lives, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. It's like if you believe something and you're operating in good faith, when I believe in what I believe, I don't care if anybody agrees with me or not. You can say whatever you want. I'm not even going to pay attention to it. I'm going to get on with my life.
I see your point. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I agree with that. And I was just going to say, I see your point on that, not just to this case, but in so many situations when people genuinely want to move on, you just get to a point where you're like, I don't care. I have to
No.
move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude. I mean, think about all that strife. I mean, you want to
It'd
live
be
your life. You just get on with your life. So what? People don't agree with the things that you agree with. You accept it. That's part of being an adult. Like I don't get offended that people don't agree with me, but one of the things I always say to people, like debate me. I don't like I'm not afraid to debate my ideas. It's not like I just thought of them
right.
because I like them. I try to use logic. If you believe in what you believe and people don't agree, then why does it bother you?
That's so well said. I agree because there's the discussion about the Idaho 4. I'm willing to debate people on it. Many people are. But as judgmental as this sounds, I can kind of tell if I've seen, maybe somebody else's content or just personality. Are you going to really debate an idea in a calm way? Or are you just going to end up making something personal? You're going to bring in something unrelated to try to prove your point. And then it's just a soundbite, town hall BS. And that's not effective. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
don't,
Dude, I agree with you 100%. And let me make a caveat to what I said because you're spot on. I won't debate somebody that doesn't have good faith in mind. In other words, they're not having an intellectually honest debate.
yeah. And it's kind of easy to tell who has that intention and who doesn't. Right. And part of the beauty of a true debate, JJ, is that you have somebody when you're debating, you're not just debating your side, but you're actually able to give credit to somebody else's point they're making when it aligns with yours. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be overlap in things that people agree on. We never see that in public debates ever anymore, ever, or very rarely, I should say. And Angel Heart, thank you for the big super chat. Gave you a nice compliment, JJ. Said, sorry I'm not that talkative this evening. It's a great show. I watch DA too, but I don't get to hear JJ talk this much, and he's amazing. I love
Thank
all
you.
my Hive and you, Bertie. So glad I'm here tonight with you all. Well, thank you, Angel Heart, and JJ, obviously, thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. I get it. It's hard sometimes because I can derail a conversation, right? If people are talking about one thing and I start talking about this stuff, it's not always going to be productive. So I understand the context of certain things. It is frustrating because I am an opinionated person and sometimes I'm burning up inside, right? Because I want to challenge, but I gotta tip my hat to Dago. Everybody knows Dago. Like he and I have had this discussion many times on stream. I don't even know if I can trust the most basic information about the case, right? And so it's a big step, I think, to start acknowledging that.
I agree, and I think it's important to be able to at least talk about it. Right now, I see what you're saying as far as like the timing of when to bring up certain topics, derailing it. That's just self-awareness, right? It's a part of talking, online with somebody or just in person. It's good manners.
Yeah, and it's hard, dude. I mean,
Yeah, it
you
is.
know, I like, you know, to me, and it's probably not great for me socially. I mean, I've had to bite my tongue a lot, in social situations because I know it's not going to go in a productive direction, right? So, and I get it, I understand that. It's all what people's what sort of schema they have of the world, right? You're not going to talk to like a normie type person about high level operations when they don't even know about the big operations that have happened in the past, right? So I have to be careful sometimes because you have to learn sort of, you have to read the room, right? You got to read the room. And in many cases, on Devil's Advocates, there I talk about a lot of this stuff. It's not a problem. It's just I can't go too far out because about possibilities even because then I don't want to derail the direction of things. Now, Bertie and I have to the Hive here. We've talked about some of this stuff. And so obviously you have to be on the same page with somebody to know you can have a good faith discussion and they're not afraid to go out there because ideas are only dangerous to people who are not operating in good faith.
True that. True that, man. That is a great quote. And if your idea or if your narrative shatters the second somebody questions it, it's not a strong narrative. Joseph Valdez offers a theory up saying key to this case is the area night connections to JD and Officer Rosie. Rosie stole Murphy and the chain of custody forms from the dog pound, converging intelligence or converging incentives being JD, area nights, and Rosie.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot. It seems God, this case is so crazy, man.
It's so weird because like when you hear stuff like that, it's like maybe, you know what I mean? It's like maybe. How do we? I mean, there's crazier things out there than that, but I kind of, to just speak freely on that, I think that that's still just very low level for all of the other things that we've seen to require a cover up for that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, also, yeah, to your point, I agree on, I think the Rosie thread needed to be pulled more. That was one thing I've talked
I
about.
remember that.
Yeah, in the past. So, but at the same time, we're talking about a very highly coordinated thing going on here. And would that, now I can see the Area Knights angle, right? I would highly recommend people who haven't when you get around to it, it's a pretty dense book, but Dark Alliance, which we all know about what happened. That movie American Made with Tom Cruise was based off of stuff from that book where the CIA was partnering with these groups in Nicaragua to like run guns and stuff, and the CIA was running drugs and guns. And one of the reasons supposedly was to raise money because they couldn't get approval through Congress. So they did black ops to get money to fund the Contras fighting the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, right? And they started Southern Air Transport. The reason I mention that is because if you have organized crime organizations, there's a long and storied history about intelligence and government agencies partnering with organized crime for shared interests, right? Converging interests.
And there's a history of it. There absolutely is. And Hoffy Master said Abel flipped out on Cade close to death. Some intervention had to disable Abel before tragedy, creating Abel's tragedy. After that, the dominoes fell and brought up the "you're being cheated on" text, which I'm going to lump these together because Joseph, thank you again for another super chat, said, quote unquote, "you're getting cheated on" text to Ethan Chapin, likely agent in the OP, isolating him from the girls injured at the Whites, carried to 1122. That's the undiluted blood banister on the second floor. So what I like about Joseph's comments, the last two that he's had, and to kind of loop in what Hoffy said is, does that text have more of a meaning than just a social cue or a social dagger, you might say, right? Is it not just going to be an emotional ramp up? Is there a bigger meaning to a text? Maybe. It's not an unrealistic thing. We've had somebody email us and I've read it on stream about it being a code potentially to, again, socially isolate the person.
Right. It could be code, but it also, in my opinion, if you look at the bigger picture and there was distraction stuff going on, you release information that gets people digging into who are they, who are they really talking about, who's cheating with who, and so on and so forth. It also gets people talking about something, which
It's so
Chris
true.
Whitcomb, I don't think, wanted to really go down that road too much.
It's a good point too about it gets people talking. And RC 3340, thank you for the super chat. Said the greatest injustice in history is what was done to Jesus. P.S. I think Brian Koberger took the plea knowing he was innocent, but given his knowledge of the system, he took the plea. God bless. It's kind of similar to what we read earlier. I don't think I read that one twice. If I did, I apologize. But it's a good point. A lot of people think that Brian Koberger thought he could outsmart the system. It seems like a crazy, crazy thing to do, and it doesn't seem like anything that he's really ever done throughout his life before to take big, giant risks like that. You know what I mean? Like you're on the up and up. You're losing weight. You've kicked the drugs. You got into a PhD program at a massive at a great university for that program. Why just go throw it away and kill 4 people that you apparently have no motive to kill them for? Just to see if you can outsmart the system. That's wild. Thank you.
Look, you
RC.
can, dude, we could go even further out there and start talking about MK Ultra. You know, we could
He
talk
kind of
about
fits the script of who they would pick.
right. I mean, you could really get into some crazy stuff with like the Tyler Robinson stuff and with Luigi Mangione stuff and all that. But again, I'm trying to keep in context with what we know about at least what some information that we may be able to trust. And but at some points, I don't know if I can trust any information. And so at what point it can go on forever, because when they can just lie to people forever about cases, as they have with things like JFK and the Civil War. I mean, when you start digging into things, there's information we never were taught in school. The mainstream media is never going to tell you about. Mainstream documentaries are never going to cover about what really happened. And you don't have to listen. We don't need the government or the power structure's permission to believe something. If the public just all got together and said, you know what? We're not even paying attention to you guys anymore.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, we're not even going to pay taxes. We're not paying taxes anymore.
Well, I mean, if a critical mass of people were to wake up, which is why they're pushing so hard with all the AI and all this, they want to shape everybody's reality and limit what people can see and can't see and question actual reality, because they don't want citizens waking up, you know, to what's really going on in the world. And if enough people just, like, this is what I say, dude, just laugh at them when they're telling you ridiculous shit and you know it's a psyop. Screw them. Live your life. Laugh at them. They want you to be fighting amongst each other, because if you're fighting amongst each other online, guess what you're not doing? You're not talking to people in real life about what's going on.
Facts. Well said. Well said. And I want to give a shout out back to Mike DeSpit for the super chat, saying, great live tonight. I've been deep into the money aspect of this. It's great to hear other minds provide some insights I haven't thought of. And Angel Heart, thank you for gifting out these memberships. Angel Heart, guys, tonight gave 5, 10, 15, 20. I'm still go 20 memberships Angel Heart has given this evening alone. That is freaking incredible. Thank you, Angel Heart, for that. That is so kind of you, and I appreciate it. That's a GOAT award of the night. That's crazy.
Well done, Angel Heart. That was a good movie, by the way, Angel Heart.
I haven't seen that one, I don't think.
Yeah,
I got to check it out.
It's a dark one. Robert De Niro. It takes Lisa Bonet. Takes Mickey Rourke, a younger Mickey Rourke.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
Takes place in New Orleans, like voodoo themes and stuff. It's pretty wild.
I'll have to check that out. C87 Baby 94 said this case is not gonna get solved without Dilly Dim and Finky Ass. I am so tired of them. They know and both seen and heard. Funky has the evidence. Well, Dilly Dum too. I'm sure that we could piece together the nicknames that C87 Baby 94 gave them. Thank you,
Yeah.
C87 Baby 94 for the super chat.
Well done.
I don't think you're wrong. I've said one of the biggest things about this case is why are Dylan and Bethany getting the treatment that they are? Because I do believe that they know. I think that a lot of people know what happened. I think that Dylan and Bethany, you could go down the route of they're being shielded legally because of a burglary charge. We kind of went on the legal technical route of that a couple of streams ago. You could say they were given immunity. You could say they actually did witness it. You could say a handful of things, but what you really, it's hard to defend that they are just interviewing them so poorly and none of the alarm bells in any detective's heads are going off. That seems to be the biggest stretch of them all, is that they don't think that something's sketchy about them. There's no way you could sit across from a table with them. And I mean, look at just Jack Decor. Okay. Jack Decor walks up, and whether he was quote unquote detained or not, he got put in the back of a cop car. And then you hear, is it Snyder or Warner? I can't remember which body cam it was. You hear him talking to Gundy saying, oh yeah, the ex-boyfriend, came up and he's in the back of the car now. Right. So like there was some sort of instinct there. And so I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that different departments, different people can all sit across the table from DM and BF and hear that and not question it.
Look, Birdie, I'm going to blame this on you for what I'm about to say, okay?
Oh, shit. Why?
I mean, what if, this is just, again, guys, theorizing. What if there was a research operation that took place? Research operations have funding. They wanted to study. One of the NIJ funding things that I looked at least, Birdie, you know a lot about this stuff more than I do, was crime in rural areas.
Yeah.
Right? What if there was money being put into this because there were drug stuff going on through that part of the country? I'm not singling out Moscow and Pullman. I'm just saying through the Pacific Northwest. What if the whole, Seattle heroin crisis was manufactured, right? If you want to go back to the whole grunge era and all that stuff, right? So what if there was a research operation going on and it had national security implications and all the people involved in the case were some at least connected to it? What if, let's go even one step further. What if the whole Brent-Kopaka standoff was part of that?
They really do seem to have every box checked to make the perfect confusing loop of people are never going to be able to figure this out. There's so many different angles and there's so many things that work together. It does not feel natural, JJ. It could feel like a loop that you're studying. We could be being studied right now.
Listen, guys, I'm gonna throw something out there. It's not directly connected, but it's connected. When you hear the government, when you look into certain things that they are quote unquote studying, right, you guys know what DARPA is, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. That's basically the research arm of the military. Well, guess who controls DARPA? The CIA controls DARPA. DARPA are the ones that do all the big research that we don't know about because it's covered under national security and intelligence, right? It's protected. When they say they're going to study, I'll throw it out there, geoengineering, right? Dimming the sun to cool the earth.
Yep.
Where do you think they're testing it? There's only one way to test that kind of stuff, is to actually do it.
Well said.
Okay. Now, what I'm not saying that they carried out murders. What I'm saying is, if you want to study how a major type of event would be handled in a rural area or in a university setting, how would you study it?
You would do it in that rural area.
Right. So the only reason I'm saying, that's why I'm tying it to like the DARPA thing. I'm trying to get people to connect that there are things that go on all the time and they're not, if it's covered under national security, they don't have to tell you about it. So I think Birdie's frozen because, yeah, it looks like he is. All right. So anyway, the reason why I bring up stuff like that is what I try to do, and if you ever, want to check out my channel, you'll see I try to tie everything that I talk about into things that are either happening or confirmed that have already happened or what I think is possibly happening, right? So anybody who's ever heard me talk on here or anywhere else knows that's how I look at things. I don't think you can separate those things.
Well, and JJ, I hate to do this to you, man, but I'm gonna wrap this up because now my phone died. I'm a mess tonight, so I can't even hear you when it's frozen. So I was kind of managing before, but we're at about 2.5 hours, which is great. And JJ, you crushed tonight, man. It's always awesome getting a chance to chat with you. Hive, if you do not know JJ's page, here it is, JJ State of the Deep. It's at State of the Deep. You can also follow him on X as well. And he did just start his YouTube channel. He's almost at 1,000 subscribers. Hopefully you can get him over that. Go show some love. And JJ, will obviously, you and I have been chatting offline, trying to get a more regular cadence, not just about the Idaho 4 case, but having general discussions about stuff like this. And I personally really enjoy them. I hope you all did in the chat. And wow, up north, Alaska just gave a massive super chat to finish us out and said, thank you for providing a platform where everybody will welcome is open to Jesus. Thank you for providing a platform where everybody is welcome to their view. Bizarre. And thank you for being alive. On my way home from work and continue walking the dog. LOL. Pretty amazing. I appreciate that super chat up north to Alaska. It's one thing that's super important to me. And JJ, I know you and we've known each other for a little bit now. I mean, even offline, I'll say to you, I'm like, dude, you can say whatever you want. I mean, I really hold that near and dear. I want people to come out and speak their mind and say what they feel and just let it rip, because I think it's something that's missing in a lot of spaces.
And my agent just commented in the chat that, or my handler, however you want to look at it, Philly Special. My first live is Friday. I'm going to take another crack at it, and it's earlier. It's before, it doesn't overlap with the other streams, so it'll be 6 p.m. Eastern time. So it's earlier. I'm going to do my best. I'm way far away from Birdie's level, but I'm doing my best. I'm going to try to learn to do the lives, and I'm going to have Birdie on at some point.
Yep.
And
we'll get it going.
And I just wanted to thank everybody, man. Birdie, you guys are awesome, and the Hive is awesome, and I'm very, very thankful and appreciative, to get to talk with you guys. Birdie's getting it from all sides tonight, but I just wanted to thank everybody, man. It's always fun coming on here, and I think it's good to workshop ideas, and I think it's okay. You can put out an idea and then say that's probably not that plausible, but I think it's good to look at all different types of possibilities in any situation, and look at the big picture. I think that's for me anyway, that's the takeaway.
Again, I miss all of that. I'm sure that I'm going to be hearing that on the replay. And Unredacted Alley, $5 said, "Is your dog still in the house and not on the roof?" My dog is in the house. That's my code word for peeing, because there was somebody that tuned in that hated when I would say I'd have to pee. They're like, "You're a grown man. Why do you have to say you got to pee?" So it became an inside joke. And I just saw Angel Heart. Thank you so much. 20 memberships and a freaking $100 super chat. What the hell? Thank you.
Oh man, you rock.
That Angel Heart said, "Join the Hive and have a wonderful family besides the one you may have. Love you, JJ." JJ, it's been a pleasure. Angel Heart, so well said. The Hive, I hope, is that place for you to look forward to tuning into. And it's not just like a stream and you leave. We got our Discord. We got, obviously daily streams, Saturday streams. It really is a great community. And it's not just because I'm up here talking to the mic. It's because of all of you in the chat. And I'm going to try to wrap this up now, JJ, before my internet gets out. Angel Heart, thank you again so much. Thank you to everybody for this super chats. And JJ, thank you for just a great conversation. The cable guy comes tomorrow, and I will make sure that he is double checking the output of this damn new router before he leaves. So, JJ, I will reach out to you. We'll talk offline in the next couple of days, and I hope that everybody has an incredible rest of their evening. Go follow JJ at State of the Deep, and I will see you all tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Cheers, everybody.